Celia blinked at her reflection in the mirror, her jade eyes betraying a mixture of dread and resolve. The burden of her approaching 30th birthday felt like a looming shadow, a ticking clock that threatened to unravel everything she had strived for as a Narian woman. Celia understood the harsh reality awaiting her if she failed to bear a child before her 30th year. An unyielding biological compulsion, a cruel twist of evolution meant to preserve her kind at the expense of many lives. She had always been fiercely dedicated to her career, ascending through the ranks of the Galactic Defense Force with a relentless focus that left little room for personal ties. But with only days left before her birthday, Celia realized the cost of her ambition. "I can't let it end like this," she murmured, gripping the edge of the sink. "I won't." Desperation led Celia to devise a risky plan, to find a partner willing to help her conceive. It was a long shot, but time was slipping away, and she refused to accept defeat. With a final look at her reflection, Celia straightened her uniform and stepped out of her quarters. Her boots echoed sharply against the metal floor of the starship, Orion's Edge. She headed toward the bridge where Commander Eric Storm stood, his rugged face illuminated by the glow of the view screen. "Commander Storm," Celia greeted crisply, her tone professional. "I need to speak with you privately." Eric, his penetrating green eyes meeting hers, nodded. "Of course, Lieutenant. My ready room in 5 minutes." Celia's heart raced as she made her way to the ready room. Eric was a human, known for their adaptability and quick thinking. If anyone could assist her, it was him. Her mind buzzed with the words she had rehearsed countless times, but now that the moment was at hand, a flicker of uncertainty crept in. The door slid open, revealing Eric seated behind his desk, his expression inquisitive. "What can I do for you, Lieutenant?" Celia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation. "Commander, I need your help with a personal matter. It's a matter of life and death." Eric leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Go on." "I'm Narian," Celia began, her voice trembling. "If I don't conceive a child before my 30th birthday next week, I will die." The gravity of her words hung in the air. Eric's eyes widened in shock. "I know it sounds unbelievable," Celia continued, "but it's a biological imperative for my species. I've been so focused on my career that I didn't anticipate the consequences, and now I'm out of time." Eric leaned back, his expression unreadable. "That's a lot to take in, Lieutenant. I'm not sure how I can assist you." Celia's heart sank, but she held her resolve. "I need a partner, someone willing to help me conceive. I know it's a lot to ask, but I don't have any other options." Eric remained silent for a moment, his gaze distant. Finally, he spoke softly. "I'm sorry, Celia, but I can't be that person for you. It's too much too quickly. We barely know each other." Tears threatened to fall, but Celia blinked them away. She had expected this, yet it still stung. "I understand, Commander. Thank you for listening." As she turned to leave, her shoulders sagging in defeat, Eric called after her. "Wait, Celia. I may not be able to help you myself, but I think I know someone who can." Her heart leapt with renewed hope. "Who?" Eric's eyes gleamed with a hint of mischief. "His name is Jaxon Torr. He's a mercenary, a bit of a rogue, but he's got a heart of gold and owes me a favor." Celia felt a flicker of apprehension, but pushed it aside. If Eric trusted Jaxon, she would too. "Where can I find him?" Eric tapped a few commands into his console, bringing up a star map. "He's currently on Zoria Prime, a trading post on the edge of the Outer Rim. I'll send you the coordinates." Celia nodded, determination burning bright within her. "Thank you, Commander. I won't forget this." Eric extended his hand. "Good luck, Lieutenant. And be careful. The Outer Rim can be a dangerous place." Celia shook his hand, a smile tugging at her lips. "I can handle myself, sir, but thank you for your concern." With a final nod, Celia left the ready room, her steps quickening as she headed to the hangar. She now had a mission beyond her duty to the Defense Force, a new purpose. As she climbed into her sleek black fighter, adrenaline surged through her. She had faced many dangers in her career, but none quite like this. But she was ready to fight for her life, ready to do whatever it took to survive. Stars blurred into streaks of light as Celia entered hyperspace, her destination set for Zoria Prime. Amidst the vast expanse, she hoped Jaxon would understand the urgency of her plight and be willing to help her. For she was a warrior at heart, and she would not surrender without a fight, not when her very existence was at stake. As the stars streaked by, Celia closed her eyes and imagined a future where she was alive and had a child of her own. It was a future worth fighting for, worth risking everything. And fight she would, until her last breath, until the very fabric of the universe unraveled around her. For she was Nerean, a proud daughter of Nera, with a flame of resilience that would not be extinguished. Celia's sleek black fighter streaked through the vastness of hyperspace, her destination growing closer with each passing moment. The coordinates provided by Commander Eric Storm led her to Zoria Prime, a trading post on the edge of the Outer Rim known for its chaotic mix of species and lawlessness. The journey was long and fraught with uncertainty, but Celia's resolve never wavered. As her fighter emerged from hyperspace, Zoria Prime came into view, a sprawling, neon-lit expanse of makeshift structures and bustling activity. The planet's surface was a tangled web of trade hubs, bartering stalls, and shadowy alleyways. Celia's fighter descended through the atmospheric haze, landing smoothly in a docking bay that looked more like a salvage yard than a spaceport. She exited her ship, her boots thudding against the gritty floor of the docking bay. The air was thick with the scent of machinery and engine exhaust, mingled with the distant murmur of voices and the occasional burst of laughter or argument. Celia's senses were on high alert as she adjusted her blaster, keeping her hand near the weapon as she made her way toward the main thoroughfare of the trading post. The streets of Zoria Prime were a riot of color and sound. Neon signs flickered in a myriad of hues, advertising everything from exotic spices to questionable enhancements. Species of all kinds moved about, their voices blending into a cacophony of conversation, haggling, and the occasional shout of frustration. Celia maneuvered through the crowd, her eyes scanning for any sign of trouble or of Jaxon Torr. She stopped at a small bar near the edge of the trading post, a place that looked like it could hide 1,000 secrets. According to Eric, Jaxon had a tendency to frequent such establishments. She pushed open the door, and a bell jingled, announcing her entry. The interior was dimly lit, the walls adorned with faded posters and relics from a bygone era. The air was filled with the aroma of strong drink and the murmur of low conversations. Celia's eyes were drawn to a figure seated in a corner booth, nursing a drink that seemed as dark as the space around it. The man had a rugged appearance with a sharp jawline, a pair of intense blue eyes, and an aura of nonchalance that made him stand out even in this crowd. He was definitely Jaxon Torr. Celia approached cautiously, her stride purposeful but not hurried. Jaxon looked up as she neared, his gaze assessing her with a mixture of curiosity and guardedness. "Jaxon Torr?" Celia asked, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "I'm Celia Voss. Commander Eric Storm sent me." Jackson's eyes narrowed slightly as he put down his drink. "Eric Storm? Haven't heard from him in a while. What does he need?" Celia took a seat across from him, trying to keep her tone professional. "It's not about Eric. I'm in urgent need of assistance, and he mentioned you might be able to help." Jaxon studied her for a moment, then gestured for her to continue. "All right, go on. What kind of assistance are we talking about?" Celia took a deep breath, knowing she needed to be clear and concise. "I'm a Nerean. If I don't conceive a child before my 30th birthday next week, I'll die. I need a partner to help me with this. Commander Storm said you might be willing to assist." Jackson's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "That's quite a predicament. Why come to me?" "Because Eric trusts you," Celia replied. "I need someone who can understand the urgency and isn't afraid to take on a difficult task." Jaxon leaned back, considering her words. The light from the neon signs outside cast a glow across his face, highlighting the deep lines of thought etched into his features. "You're asking a lot, you know. Helping you with this, it's not just about a favor. It's a commitment." Celia met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "I know. but I have no other options. I'm out of time. Jaxon sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. All right, I'll help you, but we'll need to be discreet. Zoria Prime isn't the safest place for something like this. Relief washed over Celia, but she kept her composure. Thank you. I promise to be as discreet as possible. Jaxon nodded and stood up, signaling her to follow. There's a place nearby where we can talk more privately. Let's go. The two of them left the bar and made their way down a series of winding alleyways, each turn taking them deeper into the underbelly of Zoria Prime. They finally arrived at a small, nondescript building with a flickering sign that read the Rusty Bolt. Inside, the atmosphere was more subdued, a stark contrast to the chaos of the trading post. Jaxon led Celia to a back room, which was sparsely furnished but functional. Here's where we'll discuss the details, Jaxon said, taking a seat at a small table. First things first, why is this so crucial for you? Celia took a seat opposite him, her expression softening as she spoke. My people have a biological imperative to ensure our survival. If I don't fulfill this before my birthday, it will be the end of me. I've dedicated my life to my career, and now I'm facing the consequences. Jaxon nodded, a look of understanding in his eyes. I get it. Let's talk about how we can make this work. We'll need to be smart and careful. There are risks involved, but we'll figure it out. As they began to outline their plan, Celia felt a glimmer of hope. It was a fragile hope, but it was enough to fuel her determination. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with Jaxon's help, she might just find the salvation she desperately sought. In the dim light of the Rusty Bolt, the two of them forged a tentative alliance. Outside, the neon lights of Zoria Prime continued to pulse with frenetic energy, a stark reminder of the dangerous world they were navigating. But for Celia, every step forward was a step toward a future she was determined to secure, a future where her people, and perhaps even she, could thrive. The Rusty Bolt was a far cry from the polished environment Celia was accustomed to in the Galactic Defense Force. The building's aged walls, mismatched furnishings, and the soft hum of a malfunctioning light overhead created an ambience of grim reality. Yet, in the midst of this disarray, Celia and Jaxon Torr focused on their precarious mission. Jaxon leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. So, here's the plan. We'll need to navigate the inner workings of Zoria Prime carefully. This place has a way of making even the simplest tasks complicated. Celia nodded, her focus intense. What's our first step? Jaxon pulled out a worn data slate, tapping it to bring up a map of the area. We'll need to establish a cover story. The last thing we want is to attract unwanted attention. We'll say we're scouting for rare resources. It's vague enough to avoid scrutiny, but credible enough to pass muster with the locals. Celia studied the map, noting various points of interest Jaxon indicated. What about the mercenaries and traders? Are there any we should avoid? Jackson's eyes narrowed as he considered this. Most of them are opportunists. As long as we don't cross them or owe them money, we should be fine. But there's one group we need to be wary of, the Red Syndicate. They control a lot of the underground here, and they don't take kindly to outsiders meddling in their territory. Celia frowned. And how do we avoid them? Stay under their radar, Jaxon replied. We'll use the more reputable traders and keep a low profile. Avoid the shady back alleys and don't flaunt any wealth or high-tech equipment. I'll handle the negotiations for supplies and cover. You focus on maintaining our cover story and staying alert. As they finalized their plan, Celia's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. The door to the Rusty Bolt burst open, and a figure stormed in, shouting angrily. The crowd in the bar fell silent, their attention shifting to the newcomer. The man was tall, with a rough demeanor and a scar running down his cheek. His clothes were a patchwork of military gear and civilian wear, and he carried a large blaster at his side. He scanned the room with a hostile glare, and Celia could feel the tension in the air. Jaxon stiffened, his hands subtly moving toward a hidden weapon under his coat. Stay calm, he murmured to Celia. We might have trouble on our hands. The man's gaze settled on Jaxon, and he strode over, his expression darkening. Torr, he growled. I've been looking for you. Jaxon remained seated, his demeanor relaxed but guarded. Varnak, what brings you here? Varnak's eyes flicked to Celia, and his scowl deepened. Seems like you've been busy. Who's the new face? She's a client, Jaxon said smoothly. Nothing you need to worry about. Varnak's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push further. Just remember, Torr, the syndicate doesn't like competition. You keep your nose clean, or we'll be having a different kind of conversation. With a final glare, Varnak turned on his heel and stormed out of the bar, leaving behind a palpable sense of unease. Jaxon let out a slow breath, his hand returning to its resting place. That was close, Celia said quietly. Who was that? A low-level enforcer for the Red Syndicate, Jaxon explained. They have eyes and ears everywhere. We need to be extra cautious. Celia nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. What's our next move? Jaxon checked the data slate again. We need to meet a contact of mine who can help us get the supplies we need without drawing too much attention. He operates out of a less traveled part of the trading post. They left the Rusty Bolt and navigated through the crowded streets of Zoria Prime, keeping to the main routes and avoiding any suspicious individuals. The chaotic energy of the trading post seemed to pulse around them, a constant reminder of the danger lurking in every shadow. They arrived at a small, unassuming storefront, its sign barely visible amidst the clutter. Inside, the shop was dimly lit and filled with an assortment of goods. Everything from exotic spices to questionable tech. A short, wiry man with a quick, darting gaze emerged from behind the counter. Jaxon Torr, he greeted, his voice low and cautious. What can I do for you? This is Celia Voss, Jaxon introduced. She's in a bit of a bind and needs some supplies and discretion. Can you help us out? The man, whose name Celia learned was Soren, nodded slowly. I can get what you need, but it'll cost you. And I'll want some assurances that you're not bringing trouble into my shop. Celia and Jaxon exchanged a glance. We're not looking to cause any issues, Celia said firmly. Just need what's necessary for our expedition. Soren scrutinized them for a moment before nodding. All right, follow me. He led them to a back room filled with an array of supplies, some of which looked hastily assembled. They quickly gathered what they needed: basic survival gear, medical supplies, and a few discreetly hidden devices. Soren kept his distance, eyeing them warily as they worked. With their supplies secured, Celia and Jaxon left the shop, feeling the weight of their mission pressing heavily upon them. They had managed to avoid immediate danger, but the path ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. As they made their way back to Celia's fighter, Jaxon turned to her. We'll head to a nearby safe house to prepare. Tomorrow, we'll start by meeting with some local contacts to find out more about potential donors. Remember, the more discreet we are, the better our chances of success. Celia nodded, her determination renewed. Understood. Let's get some rest. We got a long day ahead of us. With their supplies in tow and their plans set, Celia and Jaxon made their way to the safe house. The night on Zoria Prime was dark and fraught with the whispers of danger, but Celia's resolve remained unshaken. She knew that the stakes were high, and every step forward was a step closer to securing her future. As she prepared for the challenges to come, she clung to the hope that this treacherous path would lead her to the salvation she so desperately needed. The safe house was a stark contrast to the chaos of Zoria Prime. Nestled in a quiet corner of a dilapidated building, it offered a rare sense of security amidst the turmoil. The room was sparsely furnished with a few basic amenities: a small bed, a worn-out couch, and a table cluttered with maps and data pads. Despite its modest appearance, it provided a refuge from the pandemonium outside. Celia and Jaxon spent the evening organizing their supplies and reviewing their plan. Jackson's contacts were scattered throughout the trading post, and their first priority was to meet with a reputable informant named Kira, who had knowledge of the more discreet operations in the area. As the first light of dawn filtered through the grimy windows, Celia and Jaxon prepared for their day. Celia pulled on a set of rugged clothes and checked her blaster, ensuring it was in working order. Jaxon, ever the seasoned mercenary, wore his usual practical gear, a mix of durable fabric and hidden compartments. Ready? Jaxon asked as he secured a small, inconspicuous device to his belt. Celia nodded, her expression resolute. Let's do this. They left the safe house and ventured back into the bustling streets of Zoria Prime. The trading post was already alive with activity, the morning sun casting long shadows as vendors set up their stalls and customers began their daily routines. Their destination was a nondescript cafe, situated in a quieter part of the trading post, away from the louder and more chaotic sections. Kira, a slender woman with piercing green eyes and an air of quiet authority, was known to frequent this place. Upon entering the cafe, Celia and Jaxon found Kira seated in a secluded booth, sipping a steaming cup of coffee. Her sharp gaze met theirs as they approached, and she motioned for them to join her. Jaxon Torr, Kira said, her voice a low murmur. And you must be Celia Voss. I hear you have a delicate situation. Delicate is one way to put it, Jaxon replied, sliding into the booth. We need information and connections. Celia's situation is urgent. Kira raised an eyebrow, but maintained her composure. Go on. What exactly do you need? Celia took a deep breath, deciding to be straightforward. I need to find a potential donor to help me conceive a child. My deadline is approaching rapidly, and we're looking for someone discreet, trustworthy, and willing to cooperate. Kira's eyes softened with understanding, but her expression remained guarded. I see. Finding someone who fits those criteria won't be easy. The best candidates are often the most elusive. You'll need someone who is both reliable and willing to keep this matter private. Jaxon nodded. We're prepared to offer compensation for the right person, but we need your help to find them. Kira considered this for a moment before nodding slowly. I might know someone who could be a good match. They're known for their discretion and have been involved in various private arrangements. But there's a catch. Celia's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? This individual doesn't operate through conventional channels, Kira explained. They prefer to remain off the grid. To make contact, you'll need to prove your credibility and willingness to follow through. Jaxon leaned in, his tone serious. What do we need to do? Kira took a sip of her coffee before continuing. There's a broker named Eldrin who coordinates with this individual. Eldrin's known to frequent a private casino in the northern sector of the trading post. If you can gain his trust and demonstrate that you're serious about this request, he might be able to facilitate an introduction. Celia's heart sank at the mention of a casino. We'll need to be careful. Casinos can be a hotbed of trouble. Indeed, Kira agreed. Eldrin is a shrewd operator. He values discretion and will only work with those he deems trustworthy. You'll need to navigate the casino's environment carefully, avoid drawing attention, and engage with him on his terms. Jaxon nodded, a determined look on his face. We can handle it. Just give us the details on where to find Eldrin. Kira provided them with a set of coordinates and a description of the casino's location. It's called the Gilded Mirage. It's not the most reputable place, but Eldrin is known to frequent it. Proceed with caution. With the information in hand, Celia and Jaxon left the cafe and headed toward their new destination. The casino loomed ahead, its neon lights casting an almost hypnotic glow against the evening sky. The exterior was flashy and opulent, a stark contrast to the surrounding area's griminess. Inside, the casino was a labyrinth of glitz and decadence. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the sound of clinking glasses and enthusiastic chatter. High-stakes games were in full swing, and the room was filled with an eclectic mix of patrons. Celia and Jaxon moved through the crowd, their eyes scanning for any sign of Eldrin. The broker was a well-known figure, but his exact whereabouts were notoriously hard to pin down. They approached the bar, where a barman with a knowing look watched them closely. We're looking for Eldrin, Jaxon said quietly. We've been sent by Kira. The barman's eyes flickered with recognition. Eldrin doesn't take kindly to uninvited guests. If you want to see him, you'll need to prove yourselves. There's a game going on in the private lounge. If you can get a seat there, you might be able to make contact. With this new lead, Celia and Jaxon made their way to the private lounge, using their wits and charm to secure an invitation. The lounge was plush and secluded, with a low-key ambience that contrasted sharply with the casino's main floor. After a tense wait, Eldrin finally arrived, a tall, impeccably dressed man with an air of confidence and a shrewd smile. His eyes, dark and calculating, assessed them as he took a seat. "Jaxon Torr," Eldrin said smoothly. "I've heard about you, and you must be Celia Voss. What can I do for you?" Celia took a deep breath, knowing this was a crucial moment. "We're looking for someone who can help with a very private matter. Kira mentioned you might be able to facilitate an introduction." Eldrin's eyes sparkled with interest. "Private matters, you say? I deal in such things, but trust and discretion come at a price. Are you prepared to meet my terms?" Celia and Jaxon exchanged a glance, their resolve unshaken. "We're prepared," Celia said firmly. "Just tell us what you need." Eldrin's smile widened. "Very well. Let's discuss the details, and we'll see if we can arrange the assistance you seek." As the conversation unfolded, Celia and Jaxon navigated the intricate negotiations with Eldrin. The stakes were high, but every step they took brought them closer to achieving their goal. The neon lights of the Gilded Mirage reflected in Celia's eyes, a reminder of the high-stakes world they were maneuvering through. With their next steps in place, Celia felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew the path ahead was fraught with challenges, but with each piece of the puzzle falling into place, she inched closer to securing the future she so desperately sought.